Welcome back to Transit Scheduling 101, this series where we're going to try to sort of demystify some of the nuts and bolts that actually go into turning the expectations of a transit route into an actual sort of operable service. In our last video, we actually talked about how to build a timetable. So we took us through developing our run times, using our 15% sort of minimum layover percentage, and actually converting just a line on the map into an actual schedule. In this one, we're going to take that to the next step. I will recommend, if you are new to this series, one, review this article, and there's a YouTube video that goes along with this one that sets up the video that we're about to do. So I would advise checking out this one first, but if you're adventurous, feel free to hop in. But in that first video, we were just looking at how to build a timetable that is going to be public facing. Now we're going to make that next step and actually convert that public facing timetable into what are called blocks, but chunks of work that a bus operator can be assigned, and then they can work day in, day out to actually deliver this service. So just a little bit of reminder about the context that we're working in. This is the route. It's a made-up route in Kansas City. I'm calling it the 64 Raytown. Goes down 63rd Street, and then it follows US 350 through the core of Raytown, hitting a Walmart, hitting a high school, before terminating at a shopping center out in the suburbs. This is around Unity Village. But this is the context that we're going to be working in, and we're going to pick up where we left off at from the previous route. So let's dive into it. This schedule should look pretty familiar. This is our 60-minute schedule for that 64 Raytown, and it is our block schedule. I'm going to carry over the blocking from that last exercise. You'll see I'll carry a lot of this blocking through, just period. But this should look very familiar. As we make this next step of turning these vehicle blocks into operator blocks, I want to lead with one. Disclaimer isn't quite the word, but again, it's kind of been a theme throughout this process. There are a whole lot of different ways to do this. As you get into operator blocking, this is how people get paid. This is how you assign your drivers. So this gets involved with financial decisions. This gets involved with collective bargaining decisions with the union, existing precedent for how a transit authority just like to operate. I'm only saying all that to say, this is one approach. This is sort of the boilerplate simplest approach that sort of, if I, with no context of sort of launching into doing this, this is what I'll follow. But there's a lot of assumptions along this process, and the assumptions aren't going to be the same everywhere. So if this isn't exactly how schedules are blocked at your place, that doesn't mean that they're blocked incorrectly. It's just various ways to do this. Again, more of an art than a science. But first, let's look at how I've extended this spreadsheet just a little bit. So we have our blocks, and then we have the duration of the block. So why is it relevant to know the overall duration of the vehicle block, the amount of time that the bus itself has to be out on the road? Because right now, let's just look at it. So it is, zooming in just a hair, 6401 and 6402 are about 18-hour blocks. I don't know many a bus driver that is willing to hop on that bus at 5 a.m. and then take it all the way to 10 p.m. So we need to break these into chunks that are more manageable. And one of the first sort of steps to see what that looks like is just to cut it straight in half. So if you cut this one in half, you're at about 9-hour blocks. 8 to 10 hours is generally what I'm angling for. Maybe a little bit less than 8, because that can give you a nice sort of rounded 8-hour day to make a 40-hour work week. But again, a lot of preferences. One of the places that I worked at actually started moving towards 10-hour blocks, and they would give a mix of 10 hours and 8-hour blocks, just because different drivers have different preferences. Some love that built-in overtime. Some, if you do 4 10-hour days, you're going to have more days off. Some are just looking for 50 hours a week. So bus drivers are not a monolith. They have a lot of different reasons that they're kind of here doing their job. So it's good in your sort of like developing these operator blocks to have a variety of different types and styles of blocks, just to give all the drivers sort of some variety. But moving into it, we can see, yeah, it is a 9-hour block. So we're going to start with 6401 and convert this vehicle block into an operator block. 6401, since we have 9 trips, it's not going to easily split down the middle. We could split it at Summit Woods Crossing. I'm not going to do that. If we wanted to give maybe an operational reason, Summit Woods Crossing, if we look actually, because part of this is we need to know how long it takes to get to and from these different these sort of starting points. This is one of our further out ones, so we don't maybe want to deadhead the bus all the way to the end of the route, just because you got to pay the driver to do that, and it's kind of a waste of time to send it all the way out there. Full disclosure, the reason that I'm doing it is I don't have my Excel spreadsheet set up to split nicely here, so we're just gonna keep this going forward because again, this is just for illustrative purposes. So with that in mind, we're gonna split 6401 in half, and I think I'm going to give the first half of the day the shorter block, the longer block this time around. So 6401 and then 01, this is the numbering convention that I'm choosing. Again, there's not really a right or wrong answer for any of this, it's just the one that I'm choosing, but 6401 right here. And we're going to give this one to the first 4 trips of the day. And since it's already contained within one block, we don't have to worry about linking up trips because 6401 is one bus. It's going to be going out the entire day. Second half of this one is actually going to be 6402. Give me one second. I said I'm going to put the long one first here. So it's going to have a longer morning block and then a shorter afternoon block. Within 6401, 02. And we're going to go ahead and give this one a darker shade of green just to visually differentiate them. And then we want to see sort of how well this actually split it in half. So this next table down here has the overall length of the block. And I'll include this spreadsheet so you can look at it as well, because sometimes it's easier to sort of examine this stuff on your own time instead of trying to decipher what I'm doing via Excel. But what this table does, it actually is just looking at the length of the blocks themselves. So 6401, it is a 9-hour block. We know that just because we added up the beginning and the ends of it. See, we did the maximum time and the minimum time. So when the block ends versus when the block starts. But there's also some pieces of the block that need to be factored into our math as well. So we have our from garage and to garage time. That's the time that it takes for the bus driver, and if it is the beginning or the end of the vehicle block, the bus itself, to get from the first time point to the garage and vice versa. That's time that you have to pay the driver. So it's time that you have to factor into it. And we know for this one, it is about 20 minutes. And then we have our pre and post trip inspection. The companion article that goes along with this video dives into that a bit more. But basically at the beginning of the run, before a bus driver even takes the bus out on the road, the first step is to check the bus out to make sure that it's in working condition, that it's clean. So as the day goes on, you don't run into anything. One of the more annoying things to experience as a bus driver is a midday breakdown, because at some point, you're going to have to get this bus pulled out of service. It's probably going to disrupt your schedule. Needless to say, everybody that's on the bus when this happens is going to be mad. So that pre and post trip inspection is really sort of there to make sure that the bus is operable and prepared for the day. And then at the end of the day is ready for the next day. But again, that costs time as well. So it's something that we need to factor into the math as we're making these operator blocks. But from that, we can see, okay, 6401, we have, including the duration, the actual time that is in service, and those sort of pre and post trip activities that have to happen. It is about an 11-hour block. It's about an 11-hour block and a 9-hour block is how this one splits up. We'll say that 11-hour block is starting to push it. But first pass, what we'll do is we'll put it out here and then see, because if we have a driver that is interested in that, give it to them. Like, let people drive the days that they want to drive within the context of safety. Like, obviously, there are sort of hours of service requirements, but that's beside the point. But we have this long block and this short block. So then for 6402, we're actually going to do the opposite. So we are going to make the first block the short block and then the second block the long block, just to offset these sort of things. So same process, 6402, 01. And we're going to continue with our color coordinating. So this one is going to be a light blue, and then the PM one will eventually be a dark blue. But 6402, and this is going to be our short one. So we will do the same thing. So 6402, 02. And again, we want to have some just visual differentiation. This is more than anything, because I think it makes it sort of easier to see how things are breaking out. But if you don't like color coordinating, then you don't have to color coordinate. There's not a right or wrong answer. Oopsie. Makes it a bit more aesthetically pleasing for me. Sorry about that. Not sure why I jumped down there, but so now if we do that, let's bring 6401 down to our table and 6402 down to our table. We actually then have our driver blocks. So from our driver blocks, we can learn a whole lot of information and just look at it. So again, it sort of landed as we expected. 6402 is the longer one, but we have 2 short blocks and then 2 long blocks. So you can put that out to the drivers and then see how it works. Again, if nobody goes for this 11-hour shift, that means nobody's looking for an 11-hour shift. But again, again, projecting. I do it for the love of the game. So I'm here to drive the bus sometimes. So I can see myself going after this run if it paid right, if I like the route. But again, got to see how your drivers operate. But from that, we can actually sort of get some costing figures from this. So from the National Transit Database, every transit authority has to report a whole bunch of figures. Amongst those is the cost per every hour of service that they operate. So for Ride KC, KCATA, depending on how long you've been in the region, there's about $193 an hour. At that rate, we can see that these blocks cost about $2,000 a day to operate these. And to operate this service would be about $8,000 a day. If you annualize that, I'm annualizing it 355 days to include holidays. But again, you can annualize a bunch of different ways. You get to just shy of $3 million. But that's how much it would take to operate this route. All things considered. One detail that I will throw in is collective bargaining agreements. So a run like this would probably run into overtime rules, particularly since it's over 8 hours. It depends on, again, how overtime is assessed at a place. So this cost would actually probably be higher. And if that were the case, we would probably want to look to maybe chop down these smaller blocks to cut down on that overtime. But for now, again, this is just an illustrative example, so we'll leave it right here. So if we wanted to operate this route, this whole 60-minute service, it's going to cost you annually about $3 million. And this is really where scheduling stops and then it becomes the act of running a transit system. But this is our 60-minute schedule. Next, we're going to do the same thing, but with our 30-minute schedule. So now let's move over to our 30-minute schedule. Again, it's already blocked. And then one thing, again, you'll notice throughout this process, if we keep our blocking consistent, then we can carry our work from previous sort of schedules to the other one. So with that, we're actually going to bring over our blocking for block 6401 and block 6402 from our 60-minute schedule. And the nice part about doing it this way is, one, it saves us work. We don't have to reblock these sort of things. But then also, if we say we're going to run this route every 60 minutes on the weekends and then every 30 minutes on the weekdays, that 60-minute schedule naturally lives within the 30-minute schedule. So instead of having to reblock it, recreate it, redesign all of these trips, it's just a thinned down version of that same one. And the nice part about that is, beyond saving us work, it makes it consistent for the person riding the bus. So they know that on this is our 60-minute one, you know that the 5 a.m. trip and the 7 a.m. trip, they're going to recur all of these days. And on the more frequent days, you're just going to have trips in those gaps. So with that in mind, we're going to actually jump to the first new block in this one. That is going to be 6403. 6403 is going to be the same exercise. And then let's look at our existing blocking down here. So we have a long one, a short one. We're going to make 6403. This first one is going to be the long one. So 640301. And put it right here, and then, okay, it's about what we expected. This is going to be our longer one. The second half of the day, 640202. And let's make this a different shade of red. I like the color coordinating. I don't even have a good reason for it. I just think it makes it look cool. 640302. This can get to be a tongue twister pretty quickly. And then if we bring that one down here, this one is also a long block. That is not what we were expecting. Oh, 6403. Excuse me. That would work better if I numbered it correctly. 640302. That's also why it's really important as you're doing this work. to have sort of back checks built in along the way, this table sort of serves as one for me. So then if something doesn't line up how we're expecting it, we can kind of figure out what happened and probably resolve that. But now moving on to this fourth block, 6404. This one actually only has 8 trips. So we can actually split this one properly down the middle. So that's what we're going to do for here. 6404, block 1. And then 6404, we're going to want block 2. And now we actually have operator blocks. So we know that, because I guess maybe I didn't dive into this last one. But we knew from our scheduling math that this route is going to take 4 vehicles to do it. Those 4 vehicles split in half, we're going to need 8 operators. So in any day to run all this service, 8 different people are going to be out and about driving a bus. And then if we want to look at the price of this, each day is going to cost about 15 grand to operate this. If you annualize that again at the 355-day schedule using RideKC's cost per revenue hour, it's going to cost a little over $5 million a year to operate this route every 30 minutes. So now we are going to move to one of our more complicated schedules. So this one runs 60 minutes all day long, but in the peak period, so in the AM rush hour and then the PM rush hour, you're going to pull out 2 extra buses for each of these periods so you can run every 30-minute service. So depending on the time of day, this route is going to operate every 30 minutes or every 60 minutes. And when it's operating every 60 minutes, we only need our 2 vehicles. Our existing blocking is going to actually hold. But then in the peak period, to achieve that 30-minute service, we're going to have some new blocks pulled out. It's going to be this 6403 and the 6404. And both of these, you're going to note, are going to have an A portion and a B portion because this route is going to come in, this bus is going to come in the morning dry. So we'll just follow 6403 through. We'll do it this way just for the sake of visualization. So 6403. You're going to come in the morning. You're going to actually start at Summit Woods. You're going to do a trip to the Constantinos. Then you're going to do 1 full trip. And then there's not a 9:30 trip because we were only doing 30-minute service during rush hour. So after that, this block is going to be done. And we're going to go ahead and make the operator blocks align with that. So let's go ahead and just still the same, just name, number convention, blocking convention, all of that for this one. And then if we want to jump to 6403B. And again, no rhyme or reason to this numbering convention. I'm just trying to maybe note that these are related blocks. Not necessarily, but if you brought in a driver for a few hours in the morning, you're probably going to use that same driver in the afternoon to run the service. But that presents a split shift. So a split shift, we've talked about it before. It can be pretty discouraging. It's not something that a driver generally is going to clamor for unless maybe they have a job that can fit in the middle. But if we're going to bring up both 6403A and B, you can kind of see what this day is going to look like. So this driver comes in at 6:30, drives an inbound trip, and then to drive the full round trip. And then at 9:21, the driver is done. So they are done driving the bus. They'll take the bus back to the garage unless there's something else assigned for them to do. But then at 3:30, they come back and then they're going to do the second half of the day. So they get a full work day, but it's a full work day with a gap in the middle. Again, this is called a split shift. Generally is something we try to avoid in transit just because it doesn't make for the most appealing day for the bus driver. But let's do the same thing with the 6404s. So we'll look at these. And we're going to do that same thing. So you can sort of go through this more slowly if you like, but we're going to drag over the same name to these blocks. Just a note that these are, the vehicle block and the operator block overlap pretty heavily in this one. But then we're going to bring our whole schedule just so we can see the whole thing. And this is that. So we have these extra blocks in the middle, and then we have in the midday, we're just back to our 60-minute service. So let's see what this looks like down here. And now we can see to run this route every 30 minutes in the peak, every 60 minutes in the off-peak period, it's going to cost less than if we ran the 30 minutes all day. So 30 minutes all day, it is $15,000 a day, about $5 million. we dropped that price down to about $11,000 a day, about just shy of $4 million. So it's a way that you can do this to save some money. And again, if you know there's maybe more demand in that peak period, then this is maybe a better way to meet that. But again, you have to acknowledge that you're creating these split shifts that are not going to be the most appealing thing for operators. And then one other thing that you need to sort of consider in this is, so since we're going to lump that A and the B together, let's just look at these sort of in a combined way. If we look at these together, so this is 4 hours on each one, you get to each of these being 8-hour shifts with that big gap in the middle. So you do get to your 8-hour day, but again, is it the 8-hour day that you necessarily want? And then one other thing to make note of, because again, we have most of our routes we're pulling out to the Constantinos, but these, just the way the cookie crumbled, a lot of them are actually going to be pulling out to the Summit Woods crossing. So it's important to make sure in those moments you also update your deadheads to reflect that. So this deadhead from the garage is 20 minutes. So that one is actually updated. It actually, I think I carried it over before and I didn't update it, but totally fine. Same with this one though. We want to make sure that these actually reflect where the vehicle is pulling in and out of. So we're paying the drivers the correct amount of time for that. But yeah, this is how you can turn this into actually a operable schedule. You can send this to the transit authority so they can divide it up and then run it. But again, I intentionally did a lot of this in Excel because transit scheduling is more esoteric than it is complicated. There's not really a great way to learn this other than doing it. So hopefully over the course of this series, you've really picked up some of the basics so you feel empowered if ever you find yourselves either professionally or just you want to see how your transit system works. You can kind of look under the hood and see how these things are working, how the costing is sort of lining up, and do it yourself. In our final installment of this one, which is going to be our next one, it is just going to be a written article, but I'm going to suggest an alternative approach because this schedule is really good for laying down a template for how the day should be. But where the schedule really can show some weaknesses is if the template for the day has really it's hit the fan. If the day is not going how we expected it, this can provide some rigidity that maybe isn't what we need. Maybe we need a bit more flexibility. So we're going to talk about headway-based scheduling in our next video. But again, thank y'all for listening along. I hope you'll find it enjoyable. And follow this series on Planetizen. Make sure you follow me on Substack. And yeah, that's about all I have. Good talking transit with y'all.